So, okay, at what point, I'm assuming that by the time you start winning Performer of the Year, which you won 3 times, right? That's when you've really kind of reached the top of the industry. What a lot of people probably wonder, what does it take to win Performer of the Year? Is it primarily just shooting a lot? Is it specific scenes being like really well known and noted at the time? What got you into that position, and was there part of you that wanted to keep chasing it and think,
well
if I do this 10 times, then I'll really be a legend?
All right, so
or is that even an accolade that really means that much to you?
No, I mean it means a lot. It has meant everything. I mean, not literally everything, but I mean, like, I won. For me, it was so long ago, 2000, 2002, 2003. So most people that I work with may not have even been born then. You know what I'm saying? But here's the qualification for the Performer of the Year's Awards used to mean one thing, and I don't know if it means the same today. When I started in my first 15, 20 years, I was nominated 16 out of my first 20 years in the business. I got into Hall of Fame in 2009. I won Best Male Performer in the World in 2006 at the Venus New Media Award Show in Berlin. So I've been there. I've been to the mountaintop. Okay, one thing, it meant more money.
Right.
I can charge more. My rate went up.
Okay.
By about $300. It didn't go up again for 10 years until I came back, and I charged people more for me performing in your stuff now that I came back. But what it means to be a male performer or a female performer, the qualification is this. It doesn't mean that you shot a lot necessarily, but as a guy, it means that you are the person that is typically paired with the biggest production. This is a guy that's always the leading man in a movie, in a feature movie. Maybe not because he can act, but because he can always turn in a good performance scene.
Right.
So it's the guy that is the go-to guy for the most number of studios. Now, so when the first couple times I won, if there were 20 studios, maybe 18 of 20 would say their number one dude was Lexington Steele. Okay. Now, it could be a guy that, is Brazzers number one because they're the biggest company. So if Brazzers says, this is our guy, or these are our guys, the pool of best male performer may be limited to just those couple of dudes. And it makes perfect sense. And that's why I really believe that Male Performer of the Year is perhaps the most genuine of the big awards at the award show, because there's no, you can't buy a Male Performer of the Year award. Whereas Movie of the Year, yes. Female Performer of the Year, in some ways there are other machinations at play as to why a woman wins Female Performer of the Year.
See, I always wonder that, but I never really have any kind of evidence to go on.
Yeah.
But it always seems like, well, she's a great performer, sure.
Yeah.
But also, it would seem that the companies who are advertising all over this award show are also heavily invested in her.
If you have X amount of AVN covers, right, and it's the same girl, then it makes perfect sense that girl may be deserving of the award.
Right.
But unless she is outperforming Angela White,
right,
unless she's outperforming Jennifer White, unless she's outperforming, and this is back in the day, unless she was outperforming, any of the, I mean, it's all subjective, but there's a long answer to it. But the short answer is that I'm happy that the male performer still remains one of the purest accolades available.
Definitely. Like when you're talking about being able to sort of be a mercenary and get in there and do the job no matter what. For me, the only times where I've had a hard time shooting was when I was shooting enough that I didn't give a fuck anymore. That, the part of my brain that always, as a normal dude, wanted to have threesomes and wanted to have crazy sexual experiences, that part of my brain has always been very active. But then I have a week where I got to shoot, 4 or 5 days, and sometimes you got to shoot more than once in a day.
Yeah.
And that was when I would maybe start to struggle, when you've got a beautiful girl in front of you. And part of your brain is saying, like, yes, she's hot. This is good. Let's do it. And the other part of your brain is like, I don't give a fuck. anymore. Do you ever encounter that? And did that ever make it kind of difficult?
Well, here's the thing. I got to a point where I was able to really orchestrate how many times I shoot. You know what I'm saying? Whereas, I'll shoot a minimum of once a week. So minimum of 4 scenes a month, at least once a week. So say there are weeks where there might be 2, maybe 3 scenes in a particular week. So that I'm working more than maybe I had allotted for a particular time period. It's very easy to be tired. But the thing is, what I found is I try and take every scene as if it's the only scene that matters or the only scene that I have. So I'll leave it all on the table today, and then I'll be like, okay, so I shoot tomorrow. So then I have to prepare to leave it all on the table tomorrow, knowing that maybe the next day I could rest the next day. So, I've always looked at it as in leave it all, leave everything, totally empty your tank and just expand your tank.
I feel it. I mean, I remember watching an old interview with TT Boy where he said that for a very large percentage of his adult career that he was shooting and finishing 4 or 5 times in a day.
Yeah.
That's astonishing to me. I've never heard anyone else suggest that they were capable of doing it at that scale. And that's also without any drugs.
Yeah, it was well before that, yeah.
That's just shocking to me. I'm not going to take anything away from him because I've never heard anybody really question those claims. I don't know if maybe as time goes by, maybe exaggerate a little bit, but that to me is astonishing. How many times did you average in a day? Were you ever doing days where you had to go multiple times like that?
Well, okay, so you got to remember the quantity of productions between the years of, I can only speak as early as 1998, say 98 through 2010. The number of studios versus times that by the number of how much production was necessary to feed the release schedules.
Right.
The work was there. So when TT Boy says that he was doing as many as 4 scenes in a day, he wasn't lying and or exaggerating because he can go from then you can go from one studio, say call time at 11.
Right.
If you're knocking your scene out, you might be done by 2. And then you say, oh yeah, boom, I can catch that 3 o'clock scene that I got booked with. Yeah, I doubled it up. No worries. And then if you're in the know, you knew that Devil's Films was shooting a 5-on-1. They did every Wednesday. If you can make it there at 7:30, you can get in the 5-on-1. So right there are 3 scenes in a given day. Now I could do that. I was doing that maybe twice a week. Where certainly enough I couldn't do that now. But I mean back then, because there was that much work available. And you got to remember, let's bear in mind, like I said about the women, at this level, the dudes of this business, we're at this level for a reason. You know what I'm saying? And I would expect that a person in the NBA can shoot a jumper better than myself.
Right.
I pay that person to do that. So the dudes are paid to be the type of dude that can do 2 scenes in a day.
Right.
See what I'm saying? And here's the thing about it. We would hope that the guy that tries to do that can do it. It's when the guy thinks he can do it and can't. So I would know guys that think that, why are you here at the 7:30 shoot when you know you're only good for 1 scene, right? So he would get clowned. You know what I'm saying? But and then TT Boy, you got to remember, is arguably the greatest American performer in porno history.
Wow, you're giving that. That's intense.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, every male performer's reputation precedes him amongst ourselves. Whereas there's a bit of a brother, there's a bit of fraternal element to the male performers, and no one in the history of porno can point to a scene in which TT Boy failed.
And he did say that in that interview as well, that he had never taken an L, which having a not 99 but 100% success rate,
yeah.
that's astonishing.
And I might be one of the last of the Mohicans that could attest that, because my first scene, December of 1997 in Los Angeles, featured TT Boy, Guy De Silva, and Anari Vox in a 3-on-1. And then TT Boy was the man then in 1997 and was till the end of his career. And it's still lauded as perhaps the greatest American, certainly not the greatest white American, because of the 0% failure rate. You know what I'm saying?
That's
So,
incredible.
yeah.
How much of it do you think is just being naturally extremely horny? Because that's certainly the vibe I get out of him. Is like, wow, this is a guy who might have done all this for free.
Well, okay.
Not all of it, but,
you know
quite a
what?
bit of it.
All right, so you know how like there are certain guys that are like wound like a copper battery, if you will, right? You know, like TT Boy's wound like a fucking, you know, like the tightest of metal wires, right? Coiled like a spring. Certain dudes are so naturally charged with testosterone that they're like, you know, what's that? Like a whirling dervish, like a Tasmanian devil, right? There are dudes that are literally a Tasmanian devil in the flesh. In the business, as professionals, will bring in different people with different skill sets. TT Boy had a skill set that was his physical charge was such that he could plow and mow through women because he liked f***ing. He was a bull. And one must not mistake the physical attributes with what a person can do.
Right.
Whereas physically, he was not the largest of dudes, but he commanded the largest of stature. And so that allowed him to plow through women because girls would melt in front of him because of his exuberance of testosterone. They would like, so he would shoot with he'd be like the guy that would always shoot in the biggest of feature productions with the most expensive of female talent,
Right.
Because he never failed, and he would. I'm not gonna say one would say I would say he would murder the chick. I don't want that's kind of all right. So he would do very well with the chicks that he shot with. So, and I speak so highly of TT Boy because he's one of the few people that has mentored me personally. You know, and before I got into the business, he was one of my heroes. Before I got into the business,
Right.